Industrial Growth Exchange,
a podcast series that dives into the growth strategies, insights, and real-world stories of industrial manufacturers across America.
Join us as we go spelunking in factories, crawl through crazy challenges, and spotlight the people that make our world go round.
Whether you're a business owner, an executive leader, or just passionate about growing and manufacturing, hit subscribe and join us as we explore how to take your business to the next level.
So how's it growing?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Industrial Growth Exchange. Another episode coming in the books here. And I'm really excited because, as you can see, we are outside at Kleiner Park in Meridian, Idaho. And we said, why would we do this in a stuffy office? Let's just do it at the park, right? Love it. And today I have one of my good friends who we turned out, remember a couple of years ago, we were like, wait a minute, we know each other from middle school. And that would be Kendall Shelton from Umpqua Bank. I've known him for a few years. He's a great banker, and it's really good to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks, Chuck.
So tell us a little bit more about what you do at Umpqua Bank.
Yeah. My career honestly has been with the same bank the whole time. I started when I was 19. So I've been in it for about 16 years now. Actually just hit 16 years at the beginning of this month.
Well, congratulations.
Which is pretty cool.
Teenager, huh?
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, I've kind of had the ability to work in all different facets of like the retail side of the bank, before moving over to the commercial side and really kind of diving in pretty deep with business clients and with business owners' needs. And I think what's the most fun about what I get to do, honestly, is just work directly with business owners and kind of be that resource for them on the banking side and kind of be their advocate for them whenever we're working through loans or whether we're working through banking stuff in general, but just kind of being that contact. So I always kind of tell people the best way to explain kind of how I do and where I'm at is I kind of try to explain myself as like, if you're looking at like the football team of banking, essentially, that I kind of work as like the quarterback, right? Where I initially have the conversation, I kind of have the ball. And then depending on what's needed, then I get different experts involved within our bank as needed for either treasury management services or financial services or whatever it may be. But if it's really kind of based around that credit side and the consulting side, that's where I kind of work the most.
Got it. Yeah. And I remember the evolving from branch manager, right? Kind of the more transactional, but more to that now, that quarterback side, as you just described. That makes sense. Where do you guys primarily operate geographically?
Yeah, so we are primarily just the west side of the United States. We have branches all throughout Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, and just recently we opened a team out in Colorado.
So, well, that's great. Congratulations. And I know there's been a lot of expansion over time, but the West Coast is definitely your guys' jam. And no, that makes sense. So you talked about some of those basic services you had, but I always ask people, for you and Umpqua Bank, what's your secret sauce? What do you believe really sets you apart from other banking solutions that are out there?
Yeah, I would say definitely the way that we approach relationships. We definitely do the consultative approach where we really sit down with the client. We try to understand the business's needs, the business's what solutions they might have to any issues they're seeing or anything that they're going through, and kind of work through that directly with the business owner, rather than just kind of being called in for a specific need or a specific transaction and then kind of working through that. We really do take the relationship aspect, which I know a lot of banks say. So I understand that that's very much something that every relationship bank,
not to be cliche,
every bank says,
right?
They want the relationship, right?
Sure.
But I would say the other thing that we really pride ourselves in is being able to do kind of what we say. We are very specific about when we are initially engaging with a client. Before we ever issue a term sheet or ever issue a solution, we make sure that whatever we are working through is something that we can do. So sometimes that takes us a little bit longer than some places to issue a term sheet, but it gives us the chance to kind of dive in, understand everything about the client, run it past everybody from me to our team leads to our underwriters to ultimately the approver on any kind of loan that we do, so that we know everybody's on board before we ever say, hey, this is something we can do. Because nobody likes getting to the 11th hour right before closing, and they're like, oh, actually, we can't do that. So we do our best to keep out of that. But I think the other thing that really has helped us is our bank has always been very specific on focusing on those C&I relationships, like commercial and industrial. We do transactional stuff, we do some real estate, but really where we shine and what we know the best within our bank and that we've found a really good niche in is really that C&I side. Yeah.
Well, no, that's great. I appreciate that feedback. Yeah. And that's a really good lead into kind of the other discussions we have here today about these certain questions around really, this is the industrial growth exchange, right? And so we really have a heart and a passion for those that are, especially in the lower middle market, those industrial companies, manufacturing. I think a lot of us have talked a lot about reshoring and trying to bring things back to America. And so having a bank partner like yourself to really help facilitate that growth is really important to us, especially. And I know you guys do a great job there.
Thank you.
So to start there, what would you say are some of the big ways that you really help manufacturers really capitalize on growth as a banking partner? I had a conversation with Rob on insurance, for example, as kind of an image of, well, it seems like this compliance thing and I got to deal with that. I'm like, no, like they're part of your partnership of your business to really help make sure that you have the right people in the room that you grow. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Like, does that make sense what the question is?
Yeah, of course. So one thing we do when we're working with a client, I mean, I kind of talked about how we're very consultative in the way that we talk through things. Sometimes it ends up being a little bit more of an advisor situation.
Sure.
There's definitely a lot of ways you can approach a need for a business, but I feel like the way that we do it with taking the extra step, when we're looking at financials and we're running through a business's operations and we're looking at how their profit and loss is and their balance sheet, it's not necessarily just about what the client asked us for, but it's also trying to advise opportunities where there might be ways to kind of restructure things or do things in a better way. Sure. So yeah, I mean, for example, we have somebody that we have been working with for a little bit that really just needed to kind of restructure some existing debt that they had within their business and find different ways to do it. And so it's about kind of sitting down and we did an analysis of, this is how much they pay for each thing. And this is what the interest rate is on each thing. This is when, maturity dates are on each thing. And then we said, okay, so what would make sense to touch and how would we do this and what can make things more efficient? And really kind of sitting down to find what the best solution is to kind of help optimize things for the business, and really take that advisory approach with them. The other thing, though, is that something that's really, really cool with our bank is that we have so many different facets to what our bank has.
True.
With us going through the merger last year, where I was with Columbia Bank, we merged with Umpqua Bank, that it kind of made us one of the bigger banks on the west side. And with that kind of comes a lot of resources. And we were able to kind of be in this place now where we have so many different facets to what our bank has and different resources that our bank has to be able to kind of bring that community bank feel, but pair it with some of the resources that maybe some larger banks would have. So that's everything from the technology that we offer to, having things like our treasury management services who can be very comprehensive in the way that they do things. Our international group who has ties to being able to do things for import and export. And, also things like financial services to just cover the business owner. To be able to understand, what they have going on individually and how to kind of get their individual goals in line with where they want to be also. So some of those resources and those outlets that we have.
Yeah. So like to kind of summarize that, right? What I was hearing, and this makes sense, right? There's nothing better than having, like you said, an advisor and a partner that some of you can really talk to.
Yeah.
So it's really about pairing that community, that one-on-one touch feel as far as that relationship goes, but pairing it with a comprehensive list of services. So
Yeah.
sounds like that merger, and I remember that when that happened with Columbia Bank, was a good thing, because
Yeah.
then it'd allow you to bring more customization and tailoring as needed to those business owners, especially for manufacturers with really hard asset kind of businesses, and it's
Yeah.
tricky. So no, I like that. So you mentioned a little bit of one success story. Can
Mhm.
you share other success stories, especially around kind of the growth of a manufacturer that you can think of?
Yeah, I can share one actually that kind of happened relatively recently,
Sure.
actually. So I got introduced to a client who really had, as they had grown, and I'm sure you see this a lot,
Yeah.
is as they grow, when you start a business, you have to really kind of carry a lot of the growth, a lot of the leverage, a lot of the um, purchasing of assets, the cash flow. Really, you have to carry that on your back, right? And so we had somebody who came to us who he was kind of growing out of that phase.
Yeah.
But up until this point, he had really done everything where if he needed vehicles at that time, he was just basically going to the dealership and getting a personal loan through the dealer.
Oh man.
And it
Yeah.
gets expensive after a little bit, right?
A little bit.
And so, but you get to a certain point that you want to start getting those shifted over to the business and get things to a place that makes it a little bit more on the business, where the business is paying for itself. The business ultimately is housing all the
It's
assets,
contained.
that everything's contained. And so we were able to kind of do that for him and kind of get all those things restructured so that it was all within his business, and get everything, the assets, titled the way that they should be. As well as there was a big issue with the type of business he was in, that there was a very long sales cycle from the time that he started to the time that he got paid, right?
Which speaks to a lot of manufacturers, I'm sure,
Yeah.
especially if you're in aerospace, cough, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Boeing net, what is it, 180 or something these days now. So
Yeah.
but continue. So
yeah, and so I mean, he needed that cash flow support, right, to be able to get his jobs going, to be able to kind of turn around and be able to collect, but do it in a space where he wasn't crunching his own business's cash situation. And so being able to provide a line of credit that he hadn't had before really kind of helped with that cash flow cycle,
that working capital that's really needed. That's the worst when a lot of these manufacturing businesses, which a lot of those tech companies and stuff like that, right, they take for granted because they can get subscriptions. And I'm not saying that they always have a short cycle, but that cash conversion cycle can sometimes be really long. And so working with the bank, I see it in construction too, and other things where sometimes it takes net 90. I mean, it takes a while to really go full circle, and your subcontractors are knocking on the door, and I know that manufacturers see the same thing. So
well, what it ended up doing ultimately for him was he was able to, he was very limited on the amount of jobs that he was able to take at any given time because of the cash situation. And sometimes he would have to delay, different jobs because he hadn't quite collected on another. And so by doing this, getting this all under one roof, getting that cash flow situation kind of situated, he was able to start growing and realize a bunch of larger projects that he hadn't been able to take on prior because the cash situation was, he was able to really take those on, and with the support of that line of credit. And then he was able to actually, turns out, sell his business recently, and capitalize on all that growth. And because we had restructured everything, it made the sale go way smoother,
probably a better valuation and everything all across the board. Well, great. That's a great story. And I know you have a lot of those. So, but thinking about that, you mentioned some of those challenges. What would you say is by far one of the biggest challenges that manufacturers see often when it comes to those banking relationships?
Yeah, when you grow to a certain size as a business, I feel like when you start, you ultimately are pulling a lot of that revenue out back for yourself to pay yourself. You get to that situation, and a lot of times business owners maybe don't realize the impact that taking distributions and the amount that they pay themselves out can take on a business, especially if you're trying to look down to be able to do some lending in the future. being able to potentially sell your business down the road. All those kind of come back to that equity line on a balance sheet, which sometimes is not seen quite as important initially when you're looking at a business, right? So I feel like taking just enough to be able to pay yourself. We want our business owners to take care of themselves. We want them to be able to make money. We don't want them to be strapping themselves where they can't even make their own ends meet, right?
Yeah.
But you also want to be able to have that value in that business to be able to make lending a little bit easier, to be able to have a higher value when you go to sell your business.
We've seen that one too. We've talked about this in the past, and some of the work I've done as well in our business, and that whole investment banking side or whatever, where you'll see, especially what really will stop a lot of businesses. I've noticed this personally on looking at some transactions where you have a Main Street almost kind of business, and what's really stopping them from going to the next level to really being more lower middle market is that they treat their business almost like a special bank account. So when you say that, I'm like, I know what you're talking about, where it's like, okay, do you want a big fat bank account that you just cash in and cash out, and it's never going to really grow to what it could be because it has a lot of its own secret sauce, as we talked about? Or are you ready to actually invest in it and make the right decisions to really take it to the next level? And so I can relate to what you're saying there.
It's a tough line to walk, right?
Yeah, because you want to reward yourself. I mean, you took the risk. But are you going to take too much or make poor decisions about how you handle, especially the excess cash, right? Are you going to reinvest it, or are you just going to just treat it like a bank account and just draw it? So that makes sense. I like that one. And then the last question around kind of growth is, what are some financial technologies or things that you've been seeing that can really help manufacturers going forward? You would talk a little bit about AI and cybersecurity and all that. What specifically comes to mind for you?
Well, we've been talking a lot about cybersecurity recently as a bank, just because October being Cybersecurity Month, I feel like there's an event almost every week in the community where they're talking about cybersecurity in one way or another. And I would say that some of the stuff that we have as a bank, we have a lot of fraud protection. I would say majority of banks actually have these fraud protection offerings as well. It's just I feel like people don't quite capitalize on the way they should. So using things like positive pay, where you can send a list of checks to the bank and the bank can check those against all checks being cashed, can help save clients a huge headache when it comes to fraud, because if it doesn't match the list that you guys sent us, we can reject it, or you can choose whether you pay it or reject it, and it just saves all the issues. And then you can do it with ACH as well, because businesses only have 24 hours to return an ACH that's fraudulent in a lot of cases. And so having a positive pay like that, where you can let us know who's allowed to take money or put money into your account and be able to stop those early on, can save a lot of headaches as well. But there's a lot of different things that we've been seeing as far as like business email compromise has been a huge issue, right? So making sure that if your bank is calling you because they're questioning a wire that maybe came to them, it's not because we don't trust you guys, it's because we really might see something in there that might be weird. We had a situation not too long ago where a business that we work with had an email that got compromised, and it looked like it was coming from somebody within the company, but it was somebody who had hacked in, used the email, and was requesting a wire to one of their vendors, but the account number, routing number had been changed. And lucky enough, we were able to call the client, verify, maybe this isn't right. And it could have been a pretty significant loss to that business. But it's something we've been seeing a lot, that we're trying to make aware to other businesses, that it's important to kind of make sure that you're protected around those things.
Yeah, good. And I'll put a personal plug in there that validates that a little, because one of our companies banks a lot with Umpqua primarily. And every time I ever do anything like lines of credit that are very big or things like that, they do call me up and at least verbally say, did you request this or not? And yes, I did. Well, but that's important. It can
be annoying, but sometimes.
No. I would rather, the way I see it is exactly what you just described, right? Nothing's worse than when you have something like that happen and it's not caught, or it just messes with everything. And so the fact that they even go out of their way to do that just to verify is great. And they're also receptive too, where sometimes I'll do ACH, like I'll do big payments, but at least I will send them an email,
Yeah.
with my admin on copy, and make it clear, like, hey, Shay or Owen, down at the office, just so you know, I'm paying these 2 ACHs. Yes, it's me. Here's the last 4 of you. Just that way they know,
Right.
like, it was definitely me that did that, because these need to go out for this, this, and this. And they go, okay, got it. Right. That way they're not surprised. But the fact that you guys spent a lot of time doing that is very good, because, even a $40,000 or $50,000 that just misses, it can completely cripple a business.
It can.
For sure. So
Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been a really good discussion. So kind of going toward the closing here, what's one piece of advice that you would give manufacturers that are really looking to grow?
The biggest piece of advice that I would say is really just about having a good team of people around you. I feel like all too often business owners try to think that they're on an island or try to do everything on their own.
Yeah.
Which I totally understand where they're coming from. Yeah. But having a good team of people, like a good banker, a good attorney, a good, there's so many different facets, a fractional CFO, like different people that can speak into your business and be able to really advise you, and also being able to have a relationship with those folks.
Yeah.
So especially whenever it comes to bankers, like one of my biggest questions is, do you have an actual banker that you can call if something comes up?
Yep.
Or if you have something you just want to run by them? Because I feel like those relationships are so pivotal to making sure that a business can be helped as they grow. Like the business I talked about that just recently sold. I mean, that was one of the things, is he's calling me, he's calling his CPA, he's calling his attorney, and he got us all on a call together and goes, hey, here's what I got offered. What do you guys think? And just being able to have that sounding board for a business owner, I feel like is really important.
Good. Excellent. Well, this has been a really good conversation, Kendall. It's always a pleasure. But for the audience, where can people learn more?
So if you're interested about Umpqua Bank, for sure, I would say go to our website. It's just umpquabank.com. And it's spelled UMPQUA. And I always like to spell it out because it's a
strange
thing to say. So, but it's so we have a lot of information on that website.
Okay.
But also if they were ever curious and get in contact with me, my cell phone is 208-296-9350, and my email is kendallshelton@umpquabank.com. So please, anybody who's interested, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to just talk through things if they need it.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today. This has been great. I always love to have other providers that really help support the manufacturers and growth out there in the United States, right on. And kind of turning back to the audience here, this has been a great episode. Thank you very much for signing into the Industrial Growth Exchange. And until next time, see you soon. Thank you for tuning in to the Industrial Growth Exchange. To learn more, visit our website at www.industrialgrowthexchange.com. You can also find us on major podcasting platforms everywhere.